Dora watched Zeke leave and close the door. He promised to call to keep in touch. How true that was, she couldn't tell. One thing she herself knew was that she wasn't going to let him anywhere near Lindora. That ship has sailed a long time ago. Welcome back, my friends. I truly appreciate you sticking with me. If you've been enjoying these stories, please like, subscribe, and tell a friend. I need for this channel to grow, so please do me a solid. Subscribe and like. Now let's continue with the story. Dora picked up the album Zeke was looking through and saw pictures of their daughter, Lynn, at various stages of growth. Dora conceded that they had made a beautiful child. Most people thought of Dora as outgoing, but compared to Ezekiel, she was a homebody. Lynn had taken after her father in that respect. As a teen, Lynn couldn't stay still. She always had to be doing something. Dora had prayed she wouldn't fall in with the wrong crowd like her father had done. To this day, she couldn't figure it out. Zeke was against crime and had scolded the club riders about indulging in anything illegal. But somehow, Luke was able to turn him, and that landed him in prison for 30 years. When she had moved into the house, Lynn was 10 years old. There wasn't much to do to keep a 10-year-old busy. Dora had enrolled her in after-school programs, where she was sure to know where her daughter was while she was at work. Peace of mind came when another family had moved into the neighborhood a couple of years later, with a daughter the same age as her Lynn. At first, Lynn wasn't interested in being friends with the quiet, biracial girl across the street. Lynn said that she was too quiet and that all she wanted to do was hang out at the library. That was exactly who Dora wanted her to hang out with. Dora had taken matters into her own hands by becoming friends with Emma's family. It turned out that Emma's mother was really her aunt, newly divorced and in need of a friend. Dora and Muriel had become fast friends, which forced their daughters to get close. They had become inseparable from that point on. Dora knew Emma was a good kid, and she also knew that she was uneasy around her. She'd catch her staring at her tattoos, and often wondered what stories the child conjured up about them. One was of the club's iron fist and the other of a heart with Lindora's initials in it. She'd used the persona her tattoos lent her to keep Emma in line, which in turn kept Lynn in line too. When the girls entered high school, they watched out for each other and planned their futures together. Both girls had wanted to pursue a career in teaching, and she and Muriel had pushed them as far as they could go. Zeke stepped out of the cab and walked slowly to his apartment building, shifting the box from one arm to the next. He lucked out in getting an apartment in the Rosedale section of Queens. It was a quiet neighborhood and held everything he needed. A one-bedroom unit with a living room and eat-in kitchen. The kitchen was his favorite because he could keep it stocked with foods he wanted to eat. The apartment's location also made getting to work and visiting with Dora easy as well. Just thinking about her made Zeke sad and angry at the same time. He realized minutes after walking into the bank with Luke all those years ago was a mistake. He had been second-guessing his commitment to the scheme all along. He knew he wasn't cut out for a life of crime. He'd planned on chickening out at the last minute, but when Luke pulled out a gun, he changed his mind. While they'd been stuffing money into bags, Luke had sat at a desk going through papers from a drawer he'd broken into. Zeke had thought they were bonds and paid no attention to him. Suppose it was true that Luke had messed with a Swiss account. That would explain why the FBI questioned Dora. And suppose the FBI had found evidence to that effect? Luke was dead, and none of the crew knew what he was doing. Was he liable? Dora hadn't been too keen on him asking about their daughter, but he hoped that in time she'd relax and allow him to meet her. He felt that he had been given a second chance, and he wanted to take advantage of it. Most of the fellows he had left behind in prison had nothing to look forward to. One guy in particular was due to be released soon, and he had no one. With no family or a plan to move on with one's life, what else was there to do? But Zeke had family, and he had a plan. He had lined up a job through his parole officer and had found a place to live. His plan was to prove to Dora that he was a changed man, and he hoped that they could renew their relationship. He'd thought of looking up old acquaintances, but decided that he was better off than to get mixed up with people who were likely to get him in trouble. He was through with crime of any kind. He had learned his lesson. So going to Brooklyn to look in on the bike club and garage was not an option, if they still existed. Besides, there probably wouldn't be anyone who frequented the place now who would remember him anyway, he thought. What was important to him now was his present, not his past. He remembered being tired of not having enough and wanting his wife and child to have what he didn't growing up in Texas. Being black in Texas was hard, and his family had suffered a lot of indignities at the hands of narrow-minded people. His dad worked as a ranch hand and his mother as housekeeper on the ranch. Ranch life was fine, but going into town had been bad. He had been beaten and ridiculed constantly until he stopped going altogether. He had grown up with a strong dislike for that sort of thing. As soon as he had made enough money working on the ranch, Zeke had packed his bags and left. He wanted to be as far away as his funds would allow. He ended up in New York City. One hot summer afternoon, he had met Dora at a corner diner, a few blocks from where she worked. They had both been getting lunch and got to talking. Zeke had taken a job as a messenger until he could finish his automotive course, and he remembered that she had been impressed by his bike. They started dating, and Zeke soon found that he couldn't live without her. They had married as soon as he had finished his course and was working in the garage that he eventually bought. He was a great mechanic, and word had spread, and soon he had more work than he could handle. Along with a fellow biker he had met at the Motorcycle Expo at Madison Square Garden, they had formed the riding club. The club had brought in more revenue because he worked on the bikes too. When Luke arrived, it was the beginning of the end for him, and he realized too late just how right his wife had been. Luke Gilman had grand ideas, and he was a whiz with computers. His superior education from the government gave him advantages Zeke could only dream about. So when Luke approached him about the bank, he hadn't argued against it hard enough. By now, you're probably wondering where this is going. But hang tight, this ship is getting ready to go into high gear. Luke had resented Dora right from the start, especially when she argued against what Luke wanted to do. Luke tried to convince him that she was just an interfering female. The way he explained it, it was easy, and no one was going to get hurt. He said the bank had insurance for stuff like this. The money they would take would be replaced instantly. Zeke shook his head and pulled out his wallet. His old license was worn, but he could use it to get a new one. He intended on getting a driver's license instead. He was too old to ride anymore, he thought. Smithy sat behind the wheel of his car and watched as Iron Hand got into the cab. He followed the cab to his building and then drove away. 30 years was a long time to wait for someone, but he had done it. When he found out that his old pal was out of prison, Smitty had made it his business to keep an eye out for him. It took him a couple of days to find Iron Hand, but once he had, he stuck to him like glue. It was lucky that he ended up getting a place in Queens as well. He'd been living there for years. Iron Hand and he had old business to discuss. Smithy had been the one elected to stay behind when the crew went on that bank job. His part in the whole scheme was to make sure that it looked like business as usual at the club. He and Luke had a few things going that the others hadn't known about. Luke was a smart son of a bitch and cunning too. He had 2 jobs in mind when he went to the bank that day. But the job went wrong, and Luke and the others hadn't come back, except Iron Hand. He was the only one left alive after. Luke had left instructions that if anything went sideways, that he was to get to Iron Hand's wallet to retrieve the information he would need to get to the money in their Swiss bank account. Luke had placed a business card with the information written on the back. Luke and Smitty had formed a partnership that didn't include Iron Hand. As Luke phrased it, Iron Hand wasn't smart enough to handle what he had in mind, so they met after hours to finalize their plans for the account. Smithy was under no illusion that Luke wouldn't have cut him out if he got the chance, but fate had been fortunate, and Luke hadn't come back. Smithy only wanted what had become his. Smithy and a buddy of his from the service had gone to see Dora after Zeke's verdict came. She was so cooperative and didn't question them. That fake ID worked well, and she didn't suspect a thing. Smithy had played the apologetic friend who had heard about the account and had been caught in the middle. He had apologized so many times that the word sorry had left a bad taste in his mouth to this day. Once they'd gotten the card, his old friend had become real friendly afterwards. It was a complication he hadn't thought of. Smithy figured he'd have to give up a cut of his money to keep Cap quiet. He didn't want to do that, so Cap had come down with an unfortunate and fatal case of knife and gut. When the body was discovered in the Hudson River, all known associates of the victim were pulled in for questioning. Smithy had been questioned longer because of his association with Iron Hand's crew. Smithy had kept his cool and acted dumb. He even pulled off being shocked that his old buddy was deceased. He had cried a little. The police had let him go. Cap's murder had turned into an unresolved case. The account numbers written on the card were correct, but he needed another code to finalize the withdrawal. Now he had to get friendly with Iron Hand, because once he had entered the numbers, a prompt popped up asking for a PIN number. Luke had thought he was being funny when the reminder prompt turned out to be Zeke's motorcycle license number. He hadn't gone back to see Dora because it would have been too suspicious if he explained that they hadn't gotten all the information and Cap wasn't around to back him up. So he had waited and bided his time. He had kept the account active by depositing some money into it every few weeks. But now that Iron Hand was available to him, he wanted what was his. He was no longer a young man and not able to deposit anything living on a fixed income. However, he was still young enough to enjoy what was probably a king's ransom, he thought. Iron Hand was the key. Smithy had been following Iron Hand for the past week and concluded that he was the most boring man in the world. The man went to work and then straight home. He went to see his parole officer and then home. What a loser. No wonder Dora had turned him away. Good thing, too, because it would have been harder to get to him. He often overheard their conversation. It was just a simple matter of getting friendly with him again. All he had to do was find a way to accidentally run into him, his old friend, take him out for a drink, and then go home with him to reminisce about old times. Yeah, it was that easy. Smithy waited a week, and then he visited Iron Hand at the computer store. Smithy went into the store under the pretense of looking for a laptop computer for his grandson. Smithy had a grandson he hadn't seen in years, but it was as good an excuse as he could get. Mr. Dade was the salesman who introduced himself and offered his services. Smithy pretended to be engrossed in the interesting features of the computer and asked question after question. Then he looked up at Zeke with wide eyes and grinned from ear to ear. "I don't believe it. I don't believe it, Iron Hand. I walk into a computer store, and Iron Hand's the expert. It's a small world, ain't it?" Smithy exclaimed. Zeke stared at Smithy with a blank expression on his face. Smithy realized that he didn't recognize him. "Iron Hand, don't tell me that you've forgotten me. It's Smithy from the bike club. We were Iron Hand's crew and we used to ride in Brooklyn together." Smithy tried again. "Wow, Smithy, how are you? I'm sorry, but my memory isn't what it used to be. But I remember you now," replied Zeke. "It has been a long time. What's it been, 20, 30 years?" "More like 30. Do you still ride?" Zeke asked him, hungry for information about the club he had loved so much. Smithy didn't fail to notice the excitement in Iron Hand's voice when he asked about the club. "Nah, I'm too old and brittle for that stuff." "So, you're into computers now?" asked Smithy. "I am. A few years ago I took some courses and I was lucky enough to get this job. Now, if you're still interested, I can get you a great deal on the computer," Zeke offered. His boss was looking his way. He was spending too much time with a customer. "I don't know. I think I'll have to come back with my grandson. You know kids these days, they know all the gadgets," Smithy replied smoothly. "That's a great idea. The offer I mentioned will still be good," Zeke said and put out his hand. "Great. Say, it really was good seeing you again. Maybe we can go for a drink and relive old times, but if you're too busy, I'll understand," Smithy said, putting on his best old man face. "That's a great idea. You know, I just got out and I've been curious. It would be nice to know what happened to everyone after that horrible day. Why don't I come by Friday after you get off work? We could grab a bite to eat and talk," Smithy offered. "That sounds like a plan." Zeke agreed with a bit of reluctance, hoping Smithy wouldn't feel offended. Smithy nodded and walked away with a pep in his step. That king's ransom was as good as his, he thought, and all he had to do was get Zeke Iron Hand Dade to open up and drink a few too many. He realized that Iron Hand had changed and didn't sound enthusiastic about going out with him. In the old days, Iron Hand was up for anything and hadn't thought twice about doing anything. He was young and carefree and stupid like the black hick he was. Later that night, Zeke picked up his telephone and called Dora. The phone rang for a long time, and when the answering machine clicked on, Zeke knew that she wasn't home. Maybe she was visiting their daughter. He hoped that she was having a good time. His face had turned sad. He wanted to meet his daughter and family. Kevin watched Dora play with his son. She sure loved her grandson, he thought. "Lynn and I really appreciate the help, Dora. She hasn't been feeling well these past few days," said Kevin. "You know I would never turn down an opportunity to play with my little precious here," Dora replied. Lynn had finally agreed to change her teaching schedule and was home in the evenings. Like her friend Emma, Lynn found that it was easier and better all the way around. With a second baby on the way, she was tired and irritable. She wouldn't admit it, but this pregnancy was harder on her than her first. 5 months into it, she was showing a lot and feeling it as well. Does Lynn have dinner started? I could finish it up for her if she isn't up to it, Dora offered. I don't know, but I'll ask, Kevin answered. He hurried upstairs to check on his wife. He found her sitting up in bed. She looked more tired than usual, and that worried him. Hey, babe, how are you doing? Kevin swooped down and caught her lips in a light kiss. Hey, yourself. I'll be fine. I think I overdid it today. I did a lot of walking on campus, and your child didn't like the exercise. Is Mom still downstairs? Lynn asked. Yes, she wanted to know if you had started on dinner yet. It's all done. I just have to reheat some stuff, but she can do that if she wants to. Look at my feet. I can't believe they're swelling so soon, Lynn complained, pointing to her feet. Why don't you stay put? Dora and I will get things done downstairs. I'll bring you up a tray. Then after I put Marcus down for the night, I'll come rub your feet for you. How's that sound? I love you, Kevin. Tell Mom I'll call her later, Lynn said and slid her body down to lay flat. Kevin blew her a kiss and returned to his mother-in-law and son. He found Dora already in the kitchen, pulling pots and Tupperware out of the refrigerator. Kevin smiled. She was the best, he thought. Lynn needs to rest and put her feet up. Her feet are swollen and she said she'll call you later. Help me feed Marcus, and then you can go get some rest too. You look tired yourself. Is everything all right? Kevin studied her as she worked. Are you okay, Dora? He asked. I'm fine. There is something, but it can wait until Lynn is feeling better. I don't want to upset you, Dora said. She had decided that she was going to come clean about Zeke to Kevin. Too much had happened to the people she cared about in the last year to hold things back. She had been thinking of Emma and her husband and the troubles they had gone through recently. Lynn had been there for both of them, and Dora knew that Lynn told Emma everything. So if Emma could be of any comfort to Lynn about her father, it would be a good thing, especially since Emma had only just met her own father. If Lynn is feeling better by the time we get Marcus to bed, why don't I escort you home and we can talk? I won't take no for an answer. Kevin shook his head at Dora. Dora smiled and nodded in return. It had been only a couple of days and she hadn't needed too much time to think things through. As much as she thought she had done the right thing by not telling Lynn about her father, she knew that Lynn had a right to know. After all, Zeke knew about her. True to his word, Kevin put his son down for the night and insisted on following Dora home. The drive took 15 minutes, and when they were safely in the house, Kevin waited for Dora to tell him what was on her mind. Being in the business that he was in, he was observant, and he had noticed some changes in Dora's upbeat manner. There were a number of things about Dora that he knew, and at first he was a little bit wary of her. A couple of years ago, he had done a stint at Madison Square Garden as security for a few extra bucks. He'd first laid eyes on her there. His training had him seeing people who didn't want to be seen. Dora had been one of those people. She had been there to see the motorcycles, and it was an event that attracted a lot of bikers. The reason behind the extra security was because, although most bikers were harmless, some were organized trouble. Dora had once been associated with the organized group. Kevin was there to merely observe to see if any of the troublemakers were present. Dora and her friends were sporting the tattoos of a crew that had once been trouble in the past, an iron fist. She was with friends and she had suddenly taken notice of him. A couple of weeks later, he realized that she was following him and hanging out at the bar and grill spot he hung out at. He decided that he would let her do her thing while he watched. For a couple of nights, he let her watch him. Then one night she was there, and then left mysteriously after ducking into the ladies. He had just met a young woman who was there to meet her mother. It didn't take a genius to put two and two together. Dora was playing matchmaker. Dora joined Kevin in her living room and asked him to sit. She looked nervous and almost unwilling to speak. Dora, whatever is wrong, I want you to trust me, Kevin said to put her at ease. I don't know where to begin, she began. 3 days ago, I got a call from Lynn's father. He had been in prison for the past 30 years. He's out now. Does Lynn know? Asked Kevin. He didn't let on that he knew all about Ezekiel Dade. Dora shook her head. Lynn doesn't know much about her father, let alone if he is alive. I've shown her pictures of him and answered some questions, but I never told her where he was. By my reckoning, he was supposed to be in prison until the day he dies. Dora, why don't you start from the beginning? Then tell me why you are so upset about his release. Kevin watched her collect her thoughts while he looked around the living room at the pictures on the wall. He'd been in this house exactly 3 times. This was the house his wife grew up in. It was comfortable and well kept. Dora took a deep breath and began to speak. She told him the whole story, from the first time they met, the garage and the riding club, to the visit from the FBI. She told him everything. So you believe that he is going after the money? Asked Kevin. Dora shook her head. I don't think so, but he was upset that I was questioned like I wasn't supposed to know. At first I thought he was innocent, but when he seemed so reflective and withdrawn after I told him, I realized that he knew about that Swiss account all along, and after 30 years he was still interested in it. You said that he was shocked the FBI questioned you about it. He does have a point, though. The FBI didn't have to question you after the investigation and sentencing. And why would they need any information about the account when they could request it? Bank robbery is a federal matter. They wouldn't need to question you. A lot of this doesn't make any sense, Dora. I've been thinking about it myself, and not for my sake, but for Lynn's. She has a right to know about her father and maybe meet him if she wants. Zeke has paid his debt to society. Kevin stared at her for a bit and then told her what he really did for a living. Dora didn't seem fazed and told him that she already knew. I've always known. It's a talent I have. I can spot a cop or security detail every time. That husband of Emma's got a big secret he's not telling too. Kevin didn't comment but told that he would get back to her soon. The telephone rang a few minutes after Kevin left. It was Zeke. He said that he had been trying to reach her most of the evening, that he just wanted to say hello. I'm fine, Zeke. How are you? She asked him. I'm holding my own. I wanted to tell you that I'd seen a mutual friend of ours from the bike club. Do you remember Smithy? He happened to come into my store inquiring about a computer for his grandson. He invited me out for drinks and a chance to catch up. When I got home later, I started thinking about him and felt a little uptight about him. You told me that one of our members was with the FBI agent that questioned you. Was it Smithy? If you mean that bushy-browed guy that used to ride with the crew back then yes, it was him, Dora confirmed. Dora, I know you don't trust me, but please listen to me. Back then, Luke and Smithy had a side thing going. I didn't pay much attention to it because I wanted the money from the bank even though I was against it. Luke produced a gun when I tried to back out. I went through with it because I didn't want him to hurt anyone. But that didn't do any good. My friends died. I watched Luke do something with the computers in the bank. Perhaps that's when the Swiss account came into play. He was at the computers while we bagged the money from the vault. If Smithy shows up again, don't let him in, okay? Okay, Zeke. Why don't you skip the invite with Smithy? Come have dinner with me instead. I don't think you should be meeting with him anyway, Dora said. Are you sure? Aren't you worried that I'm in this thing with him? Asked Zeke. One thing I know about you is that you don't lie. See you tomorrow, Dora said and hung up. Later in bed, Dora thought about all she knew about Luke. He was smart and had gotten the best education courtesy of the military. His parents probably pushed him as far as he could go before he left the base. When he showed up at the garage, he was helpful and polite. He was a good mechanic and the ladies in the riding club fell hard for his good looks. But Dora had seen through him. He was a schemer. She had overheard him plenty of times telling the crew about ideas he had. How he convinced Zeke was a mystery to her. Kevin sat at his computer in his home office going through what he could find on the old Chase Manhattan bank robbery. He read page after page of depositions from employees, bank managers, and Iron Hand's crew. There had been no mention of a foreign account. Then he went through the court records and read the transcripts he was able to get copies of. Still no mention of a foreign account. The Iron Hand crew weren't charged with anything but the bank robbery. The next thing he did was investigate Luke Gilman. He went over his background, his life on the base with his parents, friends, and neighbors when he left Washington. Luke's expertise with computers made him the only one who could compromise the bank's computers. After reading all he could on the 30-year-old case, Kevin was convinced that Luke acted alone when it came to the Swiss account. The bank hadn't accused him of tampering with any foreign account either. Then it came to him. Luke hadn't tampered with the account. He opened one. That was why he even had the numbers and PIN. The money was his all along. With some digging and calling in favors from people who could access records in Europe, Kevin found Luke's account. It would seem that Luke chose that particular branch because he had planned to open the account then. Kevin found out that starting a Swiss bank account isn't much different than starting one in the United States. What he did find out was that after all these years, someone had been depositing money into the account. It also occurred to Kevin that the money thought to have been burned in the crash was actually what was used to start the account. The police only deduced that 50,000 had been lost in the vehicle fire, when in reality, it was used to open the account. He picked up his phone and called his friend. Earl answered on the second ring. "Hello? Did I catch you at a bad time?" Kevin asked. Earl sounded annoyed. Ignoring the question, Earl asked him what he wanted. He listened while he watched his wife adjust her clothing. It was a shame. They had a good hour before they had to pick up the kids. "Kevin, why don't I come over later and you can explain exactly what you want from me?" "Emma and I were just about to go out," Earl said. He hung up and glared at Emma. "What are you doing?" he asked her as she slid her feet into her shoes. Emma looked up at him. "What does it look like?" She had a smug smile on her face. She had been getting ready to go back out when he came home extra early. After seeing Sam off to school, she had dropped their son Noah off at his grandparents so she could run her errands. She still had the groceries to get, and then there was the meeting with his sister. It was uncanny how he was always around when she was naked. It was like he had some sort of radar. She had jumped in the shower and was drying off when he come through the bedroom door and began to undress. "Emma, we don't have to rush. Come here," he said. He was sitting on their bed, partially dressed. His voice had turned to velvet, and Emma turned her back to him. His pull was more irresistible if she looked at him. "Detective, you are messing up my groove. I was going to grocery shop before I get the kids," she said, looking at her watch. "And now I have to take them with me. Do you know how hard it is to shop with those two?" "I'll tag along if you're real nice to me," Earl bargained. He pulled his shorts off. Emma looked at her watch again. She now had 45 minutes to get things done, and it was a 30-minute drive to get Sam, not including traffic. "I don't think this is something we have to negotiate, Detective. You are either going with me or not." "Which is it going to be?" Emma asked him. She had her no-nonsense face on. Earl sighed. "Woman, you are so mean," he answered, getting dressed again. Emma nodded and left the room. Her husband trailed behind her just so he could watch her move. "What did Kevin want?" she asked him as they pulled out of the driveway. Earl was driving and took his time in answering her. "I think he wants to know if I knew any computer experts, but I can't be sure. I was in the middle of something." Earl gave her a sidelong glance. "You told him that you'd stop by later. Should I be worried about something?" Emma asked. She felt a chill go up her spine. Kevin was CIA, and Earl had just resigned from the British Secret Service. It has since been in the back of her mind that Kevin might want to recruit Earl. They were on the bus line waiting for Sam to come out of the school. Earl put the car in park and looked at his wife. "What is it you think you should worry about?" "I don't think you would refuse if Kevin wanted to recruit you," Emma blurted out. Since their return from England months ago, she'd been afraid of Kevin getting too friendly with her husband. It didn't make any sense because they had been friends before, but ever since she'd found out what Kevin really did for a living, she'd been holding her breath every time they got together. "Not that again." "I can't help it, Earl. I know you promised, and I know that you would never lie to me, but I can't help it." "I gave you my word, so stop worrying," Earl said as he unlocked the door for Sam. "Hi, Daddy Earl. Hi, Mom. Are you going to drop me off at Dad's house now?" she asked. "Good afternoon, Samantha. How was your day?" Earl asked the young girl. Sam rolled her eyes. "I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Daddy Earl. My day was fine. How was yours?" "It was fine, thank you. Your mother's running a little late, so we all must go with her to the grocery store, after which we'll go get Noah," he told Sam. Later, Earl pulled into Matt and Angela's driveway. Emma was limiting his exposure to Matt because she knew her husband was still furious about the pass Matt had made at his wife while he was in England. She got out and walked Sam to the door. She declined going in and hugged her daughter goodbye. When they had again gotten into the car with Noah ensconced snugly in his car seat, Earl drove to the Brooks residence 2 blocks from their home. Kevin let them in with a wide and welcoming smile. Lindora stood behind him, holding Marcus. "Hey guys," she greeted them. Emma and Lindora quickly exchanged babies and went on ahead to the living room. Kevin and Earl followed behind them. "You are looking well, Lindora. Pregnancy agrees with you." Earl said honestly. You are a smart man, Earl Solano, Lynn said with a smile and turned to Noah in her arms. You should be writing some of this stuff down, Noah. Your daddy's an expert. Kevin laughed at that. Baby, I've been telling you how beautiful you look since the day I met you. You don't need smooth-talking Earl here to convince you. Emma nodded her agreement. You know, Lynn, even if you aren't having a smooth pregnancy this time, the guys are right. You are positively glowing. Really, so I should disregard the swelling in my ankles and the fact that my back aches all the time? Lynn asked, pointing to her feet. That's where Kevin comes in. When Emma carried Noah, I was her knight in shining armor, rubbing her legs and feet and massaging her back, said Earl. Kevin nodded and told the group that he had been doing all of that. He assured them that his wife was telling her tales of woe because she had a new audience. He stood up and beckoned Earl to follow him to his home office. So how are things? Emma asked when they were alone. Things are fine, but I'm worried about Mom, though. She is moping about something and won't talk to me. Kevin took her home the other night, and I was hoping she might have opened up to him, but he hasn't said anything. That's strange. Your mother is never one to keep what's on her mind unspoken for very long. Is she sick? No. Yesterday I asked her and she said she was fine, only that she wasn't sleeping very well. Lynn had started to worry about her mother because even though 59 wasn't that old, the fact of the matter was she was getting older. She had opted to retire early and the house was paid for. She really didn't have much to worry about. Sometimes I get the feeling that she is hiding some deep, dark secret. Do you remember when we were kids and your aunt and she used to hang out together? I remember them talking a lot. I bet you they knew all about each other, said Lindora. Yeah, I remember. My aunt and your mom were pretty tight. Your mother was rough back then, and she used to flaunt them tattoos. Do you remember that old leather jacket she used to wear? Mom used to tell me about the motorcycles she used to ride and the riding club she used to belong to. All the members wore the same jackets and had the same tattoos. Kevin sat opposite Earl at his desk in the home office. Earl listened as he told him all that he uncovered of Dora and Ezekiel Dade. Earl was not the least bit shocked to hear the story, only about the parts he hadn't known. When he had first started dating Emma, she had introduced her and her mother to him. He had gotten curious because of the iron fist tattoo on Dora's leg. If Emma ever found out that he'd done a background check on Dora, she would be royally miffed. He had found out accidentally. In searching for Emma's father, he had discovered that she and Lindora lived across the street from each other growing up, and in doing more digging, he had come across the past Dora Dade had not uttered to anyone. He had felt duty-bound to guard her secret, but now maybe it was time to bring the past into the light. Since Lynn had become a dear friend, he felt protective toward her. The first thing he asked Kevin after he'd relayed all he knew was ask him it was an open case. Dora asked me to check on things for her because she felt that her husband had been set up. She also felt that if Ezekiel wasn't up to mischief, that she would introduce him to Lynn, said Kevin. Earl nodded, realizing that Kevin's wife knew where he worked. What exactly are you hoping to find? Kevin twisted his desk chair from side to side, wondering exactly the same thing himself. He was worried about his wife. Then there was Dora. She had gone through a lot. She had lost a husband to the penal system and raised a child alone. I was hoping to keep the beautiful smile on my wife's face and to put one back on Dora's. From all accounts, Ezekiel Dade was innocent of the Swiss account part of the scheme. This Smithy character, though, is the mystery. Dora said he came with the FBI agent, who went straight to Ezekiel's wallet. They knew what to look for. I haven't been able to find any FBI investigation connected to the case. Then there's the account itself. The money used to open the account was part of the money stolen. However, what is most unusual is that someone has been depositing money into the account throughout the years. I'm assuming that Smithy is behind that. It is safe to assume that Ezekiel doesn't know, and the account balance must be quite substantial. Smithy's been depositing money to keep the account growing, and I'm guessing that Ezekiel must have either the account number or some other form of access, and he doesn't know it, Earl said, thinking out loud. I thought so too. I'm not prepared to do any legwork at the moment, and I don't want to get Lynn upset. That's why I called you. I need a favor, Kevin said. Earl smiled at his friend. So you think playing dumb and letting me recite everything you've already figured out yourself is going to get me interested? I don't want my wife upset either. She already is suspicious of you. She thinks you'll try to recruit me. Kevin laughed out loud. Emma is a smart woman. So are you up for some extracurricular activity? You know, if Emma finds out, you're going down with me, right? Earl asked. For the next 15 minutes, the men mapped out their strategy. Earl would tackle the technical stuff, and Kevin would talk some more with Dora for information. Emma followed Noah as he crawled around, and she let him crawl to the closed door. She could hear the men talking in the office, but she couldn't make out what was being said. Feeling embarrassed, she picked up her son and returned to the living room. Did you hear anything? Asked Lynn with a smile. No, and I want to apologize for that. I may as well be honest with you. Since finding out that your husband and mine have the same background, I get worried when they get together. Emma confessed. Lindora nodded. I worry regardless of who Kevin speaks with, especially if he has to run out afterward. I trust Earl, and you should too. I've watched him when you were kidnapped. He was solid, and he kept his promise to Sam. He found you. Besides, Kevin does more paper than field work. The last time he had to go out was when he escorted you to and from the airport. We talked, and he promised he wouldn't keep me in the dark about his work. Okay, I'm sorry if I seem a little loony when it comes to this kind of stuff. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, you know? Try to relax, girlfriend. I worry too, but I've found that I've got other things to occupy my thoughts. I've got a baby coming, and I need to get the guest room converted to another nursery. By the time I give birth, Marcus will be 2, and if this is a girl, I want her to have her own room. Lynn patted her belly gently. And Kevin and I talked it over. If this is a girl, I won't ever have to do this again. When do you find out? Asked Emma. Next week. Emma told her the finer points of having a daughter. She explained how her own daughter seemed to have a mind of her own now that she was 9 years old. So when are you going to give Earl a daughter? Lynn asked seriously. I'm not saying that I don't want to have another baby. It's just too soon. Noah is still an infant. I think I'll wait until he is at least 5 before getting pregnant again. Emma said, putting up a hand, splaying her fingers. Who's pregnant again? Earl asked from behind Emma. Both Lynn and Emma jumped at his sudden intrusion. Emma recovered quickly. Lindora is the only pregnant woman here. Too bad. It has always been my intention to keep my woman barefoot and pregnant, Earl replied with a straight face. Emma turned to face him. I'll have you know, that philosophy had died a slow, painful death, long, long ago. You have no say in whether I wear shoes or not. Kevin chuckled and bent down to pick his son up, who had been pulling on his pant leg. No comment, he said. Lynn reached over to pick Noah up. I take it back. Your daddy is not a smart man, she told the child. Much later, after putting Marcus down for the night, Lynn called her mother. Dora answered on the second ring. They talked for a few minutes, and then Dora hung up. She looked at the man sitting across from her. That was Lynn calling. I think I may be worrying her. She doesn't usually call so much, Dora explained. What are you worried about, Dora? Zeke asked. He got up to sit beside her on the love seat. She had been keeping her distance, and he had been respecting that. He had to take things slow. I've been distracted lately thinking about you mostly. I think she sees that. I don't want to worry her too much. She has enough to worry about. Did I tell you that she's pregnant again? Zeke smiled. No, you didn't. That is wonderful, and you're right. She has enough to worry about. He reached over to take her hand. I don't want you to worry about me either. I think the best thing to do is keep away for a while until I can get this thing with Smithy straightened out. I don't want to bring trouble to you or Lynn. Zeke stood up and looked down at her. I guess this is goodbye for a while, Dora. Dora stood up too. She didn't want him to go. If she was honest with herself, she didn't want him to go. Look, Zeke, maybe we are placing too much importance on Smithy. For all we know, he may not be up to anything other than trying to get together with you for old time's sake. Why don't you reschedule with him, and maybe it wouldn't hurt to be a little careful when you meet with him. Zeke thought that he was so blessed to have her in his life again. He didn't want to blow it. What she said made sense. He'll never know if he didn't give Smithy a chance to put his cards on the table. It didn't mean that he would go in blind either. One thing 30 years in prison taught him was that everyone had an angle, and Smithy definitely had one. He told Dora that he had work in the morning and left. Friday morning, Zeke awoke feeling confident that everything would turn out fine. After calling his PO, he showered and got dressed for work. At lunchtime, he planned to go to the DMV to see about getting his license. He was going to need a car if he wanted to get around. Public transportation was fine, but there was something about having your own vehicle. He arrived to work on time and started dusting off the computers on display. He found that he truly loved computers and what could be done with them. He took the course while in prison and was amazed by what they could do. He had been a mechanic and he loved doing that. But there was something to be said about punching a few keys to solve a problem. When he discovered the internet, he was hooked. On the net, he could get information on anything. One of the guards had known about his background and arranged for him to work on cars. The internet had helped locate parts faster than calling around ever could. Zeke was in a good mood and it stayed with him throughout the day. He had been lucky today too. He sold 3 laptops and 1 plasma screen. His commission was going to be good. Because business had been so good, he hadn't taken a full lunch break. He didn't get a chance to visit the DMV either. Just about closing time, Smithy showed up with a bright smile on his face. Of course he did. He asked Zeke if he was still up to going to get a bite to eat, and Zeke told him that he was. Smithy was patient as he waited for Zeke to close the store and then led him to his car. On the drive, Zeke kept alert. He didn't know enough about Queens to know where Smithy was taking him. When they got on the ramp to Brooklyn, he relaxed. "Hey, Smithy, do you still keep up with anyone for the club?" he asked. "Yeah, sure do. Those guys were the best, and even after the tragedy, some of them left, but the ones that stayed were true. I sure miss those days." "So who bought the place?" "My ex-wife told me that she sold it and moved away." "You'll see when we get there. There's a place with great burgers next door. We can eat and then drop by the place then," Smithy said as he changed lanes to get off the expressway. Zeke was careful with the questions he asked, and Smitty was eagerly forthcoming with the answers. A few of the remaining crew members pooled their money and bought the garage. Downtown Brooklyn had changed a lot in 30 years. Some places changed for the better, and some gone altogether. The garage had been on the corner of Flatbush and Atlantic Avenues. He looked around and realized that he didn't recognize anything. The garage, whose awning had been a bright blue, was faded and rusted in some spots. The burger place Smithy boasted about did serve good burgers, and he ate. Smithy kept talking about the day of the robbery like it was a good topic to talk about. He recounted how they had all gone over every detail and that to this day he didn't know what went wrong. Smithy told him that the police had pulled all of them in for questioning. They wanted to know if there was plans to rob other banks. Zeke thought that was foolish. He hadn't wanted to help or participate, but when he tried to back out, Luke had stuck a gun in his ribs. He didn't tell Smitty any of that, just that they tripped a silent alarm none of them knew about. They each paid for their food, and then Smithy led him to the garage entrance. He made a production of opening the door for Zeke with an exaggerated flourish. The front room had once been the small waiting room with chairs and a magazine stand. Now it held 3 large pool tables, and in the back of the room, music was blaring out of a jukebox. Smithy led him to the garage part to find it was changed too. There weren't any cars in it at the moment. He noted the tools lining the walls and the grease stains on the floor, tires neatly stacked on a rack. Right smack in the middle was a large table with 4 men his age dressed in mechanics' uniforms. "Hey, you guys, guess who I've got with me?" Smithy announced excitedly. The men at the table looked up from the card game they were having and smiled at him. "Hey, Smithy, how's it hanging?" asked one of the men. Smithy pulled Zeke along. "You guys remember Iron Hand?" he asked them. The men dropped their cards and stood up to greet Zeke. They introduced themselves, and Zeke eventually put faces to the names. Before long, they were all playing cards and reminiscing about the good old days. It was quite late when Smithy asked if he was ready to leave. He was having a good time and a little sorry to be leaving. Smithy noted that. Zeke told his old friends that he was glad to see them and hoped he could come back another time. Smithy smiled to himself as they walked back to his car. He had Iron Hand exactly where he wanted him. It was very possible to get Iron Hand drunk and stupid now, just like the old days. As they climbed into the car, Smithy wondered if he could prolong the evening by suggesting a beer before calling it a night. He sneaked a look at the man sitting in the passenger seat and saw a man who was recalling the past and the good times he'd had in it. Iron Hand was definitely his for the taking. All he had to do was to keep talking about the past. It was a tough break to get locked up for so long, but for those who had been left behind, namely him, it was tougher. All those years of wondering if he should forget about the money or should he be patient and wait made for a cranky old man. Wow. I don't know about you, but there definitely is a mystery developing here. Stick around to discover along with me what Smithy plans to do to get the money and what Earl and Kevin plan to do about it. And comment with a thumbs up if you think Dora should get back with Zeke. Luke and Smithy had first met when Luke was touring the Federal Reserve Bank. Smithy worked in the section that destroyed imperfect bills. Like Luke, Smithy was very savvy with technology and computers, and he had devised a way to squirrel away a few bills a day. He'd been doing it for almost a year before Luke came along. Then Luke got hired to work with him. He had figured out right away what Smithy was doing and wanted in on the action. It wasn't blackmail, but close. Smithy had made a deal with him. They each could get a few bills a day when each was working on the belt. Smithy showed him how to maneuver some bills to fall into the cracks and not into the shredder. They would each be responsible for their own take. If one got caught, he couldn't rat on the other. Smithy insisted that he wouldn't show Luke how he got the bills to fall into the cracks otherwise. Luke had agreed, but Smithy knew that it was a matter of time before Luke got greedy. That's how it was with these young guys. They had no patience. It had to be quick. It came to pass that Smithy, who hadn't been banking his earlier loot, got robbed. His apartment had been broken into, and he was lucky he wasn't home. To this day, he wondered if Luke hadn't had a hand in it. He hadn't told him about the break-in or whether his money was hidden at home or safe in the bank, so he couldn't be sure. But he wondered. That was when Luke told him about his plan to bank his money out of the country. Luke told him that if he was successful with that, he would help him transfer his money as well. Smithy had worked hard to recover what he'd lost. He had close to $20,000 that was too hot to sit on. He had 4 different bank accounts, and he was beginning to feel that he was being watched. Smitty had also introduced Luke to the gang at the club. Luke fit right in and worked on cars with Iron Hand. So while they worked at the reserve, they planned at the club. When he got comfortable enough with the members, he started talking about the bank robbery. 4 of the guys fell in line with the plan, and Iron Hand reluctantly did too. Luke and Smithy planned their B scenario to transfer their accounts to a Swiss bank. Luke was a jack of all trades and knew exactly how to move the money. He promised that if it worked, he'd help Smithy transfer his also. That was the plan. The day of the event, Smithy stayed behind. One night after work in the garage, Luke and Smithy took Iron Hand out for drinks. Iron Hand had gotten generous and insisted on paying for their last round. It was just a matter of playing it off that they didn't want him to pay. Luke had made a big production out of putting Iron Hand's money back into his wallet. He had also slipped a card with the account number and PIN in it. Iron Hand had been carrying it and never knew. 30 years later, Smitty was finally going to get what was rightfully his. Luke had guaranteed him that his share of the money along with Smitty's would be accessible to him if he got caught. Iron Hand was the key and said Key was sitting in the passenger seat of his car. Zeke was quiet the whole ride back to Queens. There was a lot to think about. The club had changed while he was away, and although he was glad to see his old friends, he also knew that he didn't want to be around the vibe he got from those fellows. It certainly wasn't beyond him that Smithy had orchestrated the whole evening. What was he after? As far as Zeke knew, he wasn't carrying anything of value, nothing pertaining to a Swiss bank account anyway. He had taken everything out of his wallet after getting it back from Dora. He had cleaned it out. All that was left in it now was his social security card, an old library card, and his motorcycle license and his pay. Whatever they thought he had was long gone. "Hey, buddy, what say we go for a nightcap?" Smithy asked. Zeke looked at him and shook his head. "I've got work in the morning, Smithy. Maybe some other time. Look, I had a real good time tonight. Seeing those guys again and hearing what happened while I was away has been great. I got to thank you for that," Zeke told him sincerely. When Smitty finally parked the car in front of Zeke's apartment, Zeke was relieved. His head was beginning to hurt trying to figure out what Smitty wanted from him. He had left a message with his PO and was waiting for a response from his office. "You don't have to thank me for anything. We old-timers have to stick together," Smithy said, shaking his head. "Why don't I check with you in a few days, and we can talk some more, and maybe go to the club again, okay?" "That sounds like a plan." "Well," Zeke said, stepping out of the car, "I think I'll say goodnight, Smithy." He stepped out, but not before he saw the grimace on Smithy's face. He was quick to hide it, but Zeke saw it. Smithy took off as soon as Zeke shut the door. He was angry. He needed to step up his game if he was going to get the information he needed. Would it have hurt if the man had one beer with him? Just one beer! But no, the old fool wanted to play Boy Scout and go to bed on time. Well, he was just going to have to go to Plan B. Well, my friends, that's it for now. The mystery is slowly unfolding, and I know it is slow, but as the saying goes, good things comes to those who wait. So wait to see what happens next. I promise you won't be disappointed. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, and comment. I'm still waiting for comments. I want to know what you think of my stories, what they make you feel, so go ahead. Tell me. Bye for now.